Great. Hi. Thank you for coming. Welcome to Reed Hall. Just curious, who is here for the first time? Yay, we love it when we have newcomers. Welcome to this evening focusing on women in the field, cultivating solutions for climate adaptation. My name is Melody Brown. I'm the climate response lead at the Columbia Global Center's Paris, Reed Hall. And tonight we're organizing this event together with Daughters for Earth and She Changes Climate. So, what is the Columbia Global Center's Paris? If you've never been here, you're probably wondering how come. So, Columbia University in New York has 11 global centers around the world, one of them being the Global Center Paris here. The centers serve as knowledge hubs for Columbia, with an aim to educate and inspire through research, dialogue, action around some of the pressing global issues that we see, such as gender. This month is Women's Month, so we have a lot of events that you can see in the back actually focusing on women. This is, I think, the first one of this series of events. And we're also focusing a lot on climate and the environment. We organize dialogues for more just societies. We do a lot of events around the arts, health, medical science, etc. Reed Hall is actually a perfect place for an event focusing on women because it has a very vibrant feminist history. And so it's really perfect for the discussion that we're going to have tonight. Daughters for Earth was created in 2020 to inspire a movement and mobilize $100 million in support of women-led efforts in the field of regenerative agriculture, land and water protection, and renewable energies. In the past 2 years only, Daughters for Earth has funded nearly 100 women-led projects around the world, of which 37 are directly related to regenerative agriculture in more than 30 countries. We'll tell you more about regenerative agriculture tonight and the role of women. She Changes Climate was created in 2021 to campaign for the equal inclusion of women at all levels of climate decision-making by focusing on advocacy, political influence, and amplification of women's voices on issues related to gender equality in the climate field. She Changes Climate is now working in more than 10 countries, both in the Global South and in the Global North, to raise awareness about the issue, provide a platform for accelerating climate action by sharing women-led solutions, and give women leaders direct access to key national and international decision makers. I'm really interested in the discussions that are going to take place tonight because my background is on adaptation, but specifically in the Global South. So a lot of the work that we do with my center, I'm at the same, both Columbia Global Center Paris and also Columbia Climate School New York. And at my center in New York, we work a lot on climate adaptation in the Global South using climate information to better support anticipation and developing resilience initiatives. And we, in our projects, the role of women is very important. And what we see a lot is that women do play a key role in agriculture, but are often not recognized as farmers, mostly because they don't own the land, which means that in a lot of countries, they don't have the same access to resources such as trainings because they're not considered as farmers, so they don't have access to farmer-focused trainings. And we do a lot of that, so it's something that it's an issue that's very dear to my heart and to the work that we do. But tonight we're going to talk mostly about why is this issue important in the Global North, in France, in Europe. What is the role of women? And we're very privileged to have experts from the sector. Daughters for Earth, She Changes Climate, and we also have online a farmer from Switzerland who is going to tell us more about her project. So why this collaboration is actually a series of events that we're organizing around women in adaptation. This is the first one. We have a second event later, early November. You can find information in the back. And for this first one, we wanted to focus on agriculture. So why agriculture, and especially regenerative agriculture? We talk a lot about agriculture in the news at the moment. Agriculture is critical to food security, but is also a very key contributor to climate change, greenhouse gas emissions. It accounts for 80% of deforestation around the world. 70% of freshwater use, a third of global greenhouse gas emissions, and the food system alone is responsible for 60% of global biodiversity loss. So it's clear that we have to shift to more sustainable agriculture as a part of climate adaptation. And it was actually a major focus of the most recent climate negotiations in Dubai. So what is the role of women in there? Women represent 43% of the agricultural labor force around the world. They produce 60 to 80% of all food in developing countries, yet they have less agency to do their job. They have less access to resources. They face significant discrimination when it comes to land, owning the land, but also livestock. They face discrimination in terms of equal pay, participation in decision-making, access to finance, training, information, etc. And so to secure sustainable agriculture and more sustainable food systems, it's clear that we do need to be better at including women. Unfortunately, there are only about 2% of philanthropic money that currently supports organization, that currently supports climate change and environmental issues. 0.5% of philanthropy goes to environmental initiatives in the global south, and 0.2% goes to women-led environmental initiatives. It's practically nothing. That's why we're so happy with the partnership with Daughters for Earth, because that's basically the whole reason why they were created. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce the panelists for tonight. We have Sofia de Meyer, who's the European lead for Daughters for Earth. Daughters for Earth is providing funding for and raising awareness on the crucial work of women in around the world in the field of agriculture, and especially regenerative agriculture and the development of climate solutions. Alice Durand-Révy is a senior advisor in global and European food systems, and she's the She Changes Climate ambassador for France. And then online we have Esther Mautier, who you're going to see a bit later on video. She's in the back, but she's going to be over here. And she's a farmer and the founder of Votre Cercle de Vie, which is a regenerative farm in Switzerland. And she'll tell us a bit more about the whole concept and how it works. So I'll welcome the panelists on stage. Thank you very much. So we'll start with a bit of an introduction, more of an introduction on the context and the work that Daughters for Earth is doing, and then we'll hear a bit more on regenerative agriculture and the role of women from Alice, and then we'll have a little video from Esther presenting her project, and she's online, so she's also going to be able to tell you a bit more about what's behind her initiative. And then we want to make sure that we have enough time for Q&A and discussion with the audience, and we really want this to be as lively a conversation as you want, basically. So I'll start with you, Sofia. So Daughters for Earth is providing a lot of funding and raising awareness on the crucial work of women around the world in providing climate solution. Why is it so important, in particular with regard to regenerative agriculture?
Well, first of all, welcome to everybody here tonight, and thank you, Melody, for introducing this event tonight and the very important theme of agriculture, and in particular women in the field of agriculture. As you mentioned, Melody, Daughters for Earth was really created to try and change the pattern that was established with the funding issue, the 0.2% of philanthropy, or every philanthropic dollar that goes to women-led actions in climate solutions. And that's very important in the field of agriculture, as you said, because women represent a very important part of the agricultural workforce in the world. But also there are two other reasons to talk of potential and the immense potential of women when they are seen and funded. one other reason, or one other point, is women, and I'll show you a few slides in a second, because we commissioned with Daughters for Earth and Vital Voices a sort of research and study on the potential and how women are actually now operating in the field of agriculture. Well, the first point is that they have proven stewardship, immense stewardship, in what we call ecosystem services, such as water or firewood supply, with an important knowledge and often indigenous knowledge on how to manage and protect these resources. So women are connected to the living systems. They are aware of their importance in keeping them alive and regenerating them so that their farming activity can be sustained in the long term. The second or third reason, which speaks really to our heart at Daughters for Earth, is that women, or investing in women, has demonstrated that it has a huge and wide impact on communities and societies. Why? Because women reinvest up to 90% of their earnings into their families and local communities, whether it's by providing education for their children, or uniting communities around their project and providing work for their local communities, leading their local communities, which means that they increase human capital within their project, that they actually provide economic development as well. So they are real leaders in their field, but they are unseen. They really are unseen. So at Daughters for Earth, what we try and do, and we've been doing that for 2 years, as Melody mentioned, is not only fund them, but before funding them, we have to find them, because very often they are unseen. So a lot of work goes into establishing the right networks to find those women farmers and address their needs with finance to start with. And secondly, to also, as was stated before, and this is where our partnership with She Changes Climate has all of its meaning, is how can we help beyond funding? Access to training, putting them together in a network so they don't feel alone, so they actually can exchange on their practices from the global south to the global north, whatever it is, but to put these women together and connected so that they can pursue their work, be funded, but also feel that they're part of a whole movement that tries to move or reinforce regenerative agriculture practices. So I'm really very happy to be here tonight and to bring this really important subject on the table. We all eat every day, and the food that we eat comes from farms. And there are people in farms that work every day to provide the food that we eat, and women play a crucial role in that field. So I'll stop there because I'd like to give the word to Alice, of course, that will speak a lot of her experience in policy and getting the right means to the right woman, and I think that's very important. And of course, after Alice, to Esther, who I'm so happy, and I wave hello, she sees me at the end. I live in Switzerland, Esther is in Switzerland, and I would just like to add a little word of introduction for Esther, who to me is an example of the challenges, but also the solutions that exist when a woman, a farmer woman, supported by her family, including her husband, develops a regenerative agriculture project. And she'll speak about, the fights and the challenges she faced, but she will also talk to you about the solutions that she has found. She is one of the Daughters for Earth grantees, so she's part of our ecosystem today. And I really value her contribution to our evening tonight, because you will hear a story from a farmer of what it means to build a regenerative agriculture concept. There's a few, but I'll show you one particular to regenerative agriculture. I mean, the figures are staggering, but this is also the result of the research we've commissioned with Vital Voices. This is just to show in one slide what it means, or the potential that we can find when we actually invest in regenerative agriculture. You see the amount of emissions that could be saved in terms of CO2 emissions. You also see the amount of money that could be saved in mitigating and adapting. And of course, then we've tried to set out 3 key milestones or key figures on what it would mean in terms of coal that's avoided, in terms of waste that doesn't need to be landfilled, or again, in terms of trees, you know, the impact of the tree planting impact. There are staggering figures. Of course, we're at the very beginning, and Alice will probably talk about that, of gathering data. It's very, very hard, still to this day, to gather the right data to know what it means exactly when we invest in regenerative agriculture. So this is a starting point, but I just wanted to show you there that there are opportunities, and huge opportunities, when we actually concentrate and focus on investing in women-led initiatives on the ground. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sophia. So we've mentioned that a few times already, regenerative agriculture, but some of you might know what it is, some of you might not, and you might be wondering when we're going to explain. So I'm turning to Alice because she's an expert. So Alice, can you tell us more about what is regenerative agriculture, and why is it important, and why are women critical to build more resilient food systems using regenerative agriculture, among other things?
Thank you so much for this amazing segue. I think that everybody is waiting for the answers. So thank you so much. Maybe I'm going to jump on my slides as well, just to make it a little more granular and material. Thank you. Well, I'm just going to start with a little personal story. When Sophia came and say, oh, I'm interested in regenerative agriculture, I say, you know what? I know. I've been working in that field in policies for ages. I can do it. And then she said, well, but I want to talk about women and regenerative agriculture. And I say, that's a tricky one. That's interesting, but that's a tricky one. And it's so interesting, I really want to deep dive in it. And then I started, I did wonderful slides I'm very proud of. And I said, okay, I want some pictures because slides are about pictures. And I went into Google, I Googled pictures, and I could find two kinds of pictures. The first one is nice women posing in fields, you know, inspiring, and okay, for yogurts or whatever, and super sexy, not respectable. I mean, I'm not talking about respect, but I'm just not inspiring as leaders, and then demonstrating ladies in the fields. But I really struggled to find a real picture of a farmer doing her job in the field. And those I'm using are really come from professional publications on agriculture. And I think that this is exactly one point I wanted to raise, and that I really think super interesting for She Changes Climate, but for Daughter of the Earth also, is that we really have to make emerge this professional, very credible and incredibly powerful women that can really help and support climate change and climate adaptation. I'm talkative, so let's go really into deep and really into the real topic. So I hope I'm gonna explain to you what is regenerative agriculture, why we need to move to this, and why women are absolutely critical at the center of this transformation. So first, let's go on what is at stake. So thank you. You already said about the impact of food systems on the planet. Just one word on food systems. They did their job. From the 50s to 2022, we moved the population from 2.6 billion to 8 billion. And in the meantime, we managed to lift people out of hunger, many people out of hunger. So it did the job. The only thing that we didn't know is that it did at an incredible price, an incredibly unsustainable price, which is on the planet, and it's crossing the planetary boundaries. The second thing is that now, from an economic point of view, this food system, industrial monoculture food system, comes to its end. Why? Because from an economic point of view, we are depleting our soil in such with such a fast movement that in fact our yields, our productivity is really hindered. And also another thing that you have to have in mind is that we have also a social problem with farmers and farming. Farming is not attractive enough, and it's not attractive anymore. And not only on the north, as you have seen all those demonstrations in Paris and elsewhere in Spain and everywhere, but it's also happening in the global south. Nobody now, or less people, want to become farmer, and less people want to become farmer. So unless we find a solution, we might have not enough land to grow food, but also not enough people to grow it. So it's really, the business as usual is not possible. From a nature point of view, from a social point of view, from an economic point of view. Still, the wonderful news is that we have the solution. We know we've been working. We know that what is at stake is this huge transformation from the picture on the top to the picture on the bottom. We know that if we change practices, we know that if we really do this paradigm shift, we will manage to go from an agriculture that is mostly a problem to an agriculture that will bring solution, that will care for ecosystemic services and restore ecosystemic services. We know that we can go to an agriculture that stores carbon and fight against climate change. We know that it can protect and restore cultivated biodiversity, and also, of course, have a much better farmer attractivity. So this is about regenerative agriculture. If you didn't hear about it enough, this is the question. So what is regenerative agriculture? Maybe 3 concepts for you to understand what we're talking about. First, agriculture, the traditional agriculture was really about yields, right? You are a good producer if you produce a lot of yields. So it's a yields-focused economy. On regenerative agriculture is really an approach that is an holistic approach. You will not be judged only on the yields, but also on the way you grow it. It's also on the ecosystemic service that you're going to steward, and the quantity of water, air, and soil that you will steward and improve and really take care of. It's also, so from one KPI, to take a business word, from one KPI you go from one to many KPIs. And the result is really holistic. The second thing that you have to understand on regenerative agriculture is that it's a systemic approach. We're not talking about one size fits all, and I have a recipe and I'm going to implement it everywhere. It's really about having a systemic approach between practices, between the soil, the practice, the weather. How can I really dance together in order to be really productive? And the third thing is, so it's about working on interaction. What is, if I grow truffles, what is the impact on wheat? If I do this, what is the impact on that? And managing, having this holistic approach, systemic approach, in order to make everything productive. And the third one is about practices, and practices that interact all together. I listed here the 5 main practices. Maybe it's a little too technical, so maybe I'm not gonna deep dive, we can deep dive in it. But if you see the picture on the right-hand side, you'll see that it's about system. It's about how all those different practices interact together. One is agroforestry. In the north, we talk about planting hedges, and in the south, we talk about agroforestry with cocoa, and we have different elements on this. So, regenerative agriculture is not something that is soft or fluffy or not understood. It's something that industry has been working on, and a lot of farming and farmers have been working on for decades, or let's say 1 to 2 decades. And now we are knowing how to monitor it. And this is also, you have this figure on the right hand side, which is about the framework and the KPIs on which we can monitor regenerative agriculture and the results. We have several KPIs, and if you see, and if you look at it, you can see that we have 2 KPIs on biodiversity. You have 1 KPI on carbon storage. You have 1 KPI on water use. You have 2 KPIs on pesticides and fertilizers use. And you have 2 KPIs on farmers' revenue. So you can see that regenerative agriculture is really monitoring the main topics and the key issues, and is really trying to provide some indicators and some really results on this. It's also addressing, and you can see it on the left-hand side, it's always also addressing the main topics of agriculture and the main challenges that agriculture is addressing today. So what is, yes, I know, I'm gonna accelerate. So why is it seems simple, so why isn't it working? Why aren't we all doing regenerative agriculture tomorrow? It's just because it really requires a huge paradigm shift in economics and also in the approaches. And if you look at, if you understand the system, if you are on a systemic approach, it means that you have to cooperate. One of the key challenges is how to come from an individual point of view, a farm point of view, to a cooperation, a community of farmers that will share their knowledge, their understanding, the thing that works with the soil and works with the climate and works for the local based, landscape-based approach. And this cooperation mindset is really something that is key to manage to create this regenerative agriculture landscape. And guess what? Women are really the key of the success. Just to address the question of the renewal of generation, in France today we have a few figures, and the figures we have is that 40% of the new settlements of farmers are women, 41% of which are under 35. So when we ask who is the new generation of farmers, guess what? Women are the new generation of farmers. They are the one who hold our food system. They are the one who hold the future of our food system. Second, this is a good news, because I really want to say, okay, well, great, if women are there, wonderful, but what do they really bring to the table? What do they really change? Why is it so important? And it was interesting, I found some studies in France, and the importance, as Sofia said, is that they have a community mindset. They are the one who really have this community approach. They think about, okay, how can I leverage my community? And so I will diversify my retail system, meaning that I will open my farm, I will do local sailings, and so that I'm not only with one big producer, but I also can interact with my community. I will build my community. They are working also on physical intensity. So, and it was interesting. Also, they will think, okay, how can I reduce the physical intensity? How can I share it? How can I make it more resilient? And this is why they are also this community mindset. They develop cooperation, which is, of course, super important. They diversify crops. In a word, in fact, they do this, they have this mindset, and they are aligning their values We're there the way they farm, and this is so important. One more word, and I finished, which is now, how can you, and that was your question, how can we invest more in women? Well, you know what? Let's lift the barriers. When the barriers are listed by farmers themselves, I just took the report, and I wouldn't dare to say more, but there are cultural norms. Who'd never heard, oh, this is a man's job, come on, you don't have the muscle, you're not going to be a farmer, it's much too difficult. Second, gender biased. You cannot inherit a farm because you're a girl. So you know what, your brother is going to inherit, and you're going to help him, but normally it's for your brother. And this is also, this explains why you have 40% of new settlements, because they don't inherit. It means that after they can have the lack of professional networks, because they don't inherit the networks, and also, of course, access to finance, because they cannot inherit all this capital of knowledge and support. So how can we help them? But for sure, when there is something to unlock, which is land ownership, and they must be supported in order to be able to access to land, even in the EU, it's the same problem. Of course, work on all the trainings that we can provide to them in order, and the networking, in order for them not to be alone and lonely in their farms. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you so much. I wanted to react on something you said that I find really interesting. So you said we need a paradigm shift, and regenerative agriculture is more of a systemic way of doing agriculture. And just to do a very quick parallel with what's happening now, I mean, we're seeing that, and you said also we have less farmers. Are we going to have enough people to farm and to produce the food? There's been a decrease of we've lost 60% of farms in the last 30 years in France. 40% of the revenue has decreased by 40%. 20% of farmers live under the poverty line in France, which is crazy. And the amount of food imports has doubled in the past 20 years. And so we're importing food, which is creating more pressure on the prices. We're importing food from places where sometimes the wages are lower, from places where sometimes they don't necessarily respect the environmental norms that we have. And there is this tendency in some of the discourse that we hear these days to sort of antagonize, like, well, to present farmers on the one hand and farming on the one hand, and then environmental concerns on the other hand. And it goes hand in hand, and that's the whole point of regenerative agriculture, is that if we want to keep living off, like, we need agriculture for food security, and if we want this to be sustainable, it has to go hand in hand with environmental measures, protecting the environment. And it's the system that makes it so difficult at the moment. It's not that farmers are tired with all the measures to protect the environment. It's that the system is putting so much pressure on them that it's becoming harder and harder for them to take those measures to protect the environment. So that was an interesting point. And speaking about, oh, here we have Esther. Speaking about what we can do to invest more in women, we'll hear what Esther has to say in her case. It's interesting because in my experience in the Global South, we constantly find ourselves in a situation where we organize a training for, and we always try to have 50% men, 50% women. And we almost always have a large majority of men in those trainings. And when we co-organize with local organizations, and when we ask why, where are the women, we're told, yeah, but there are not that many women in that field. And that's not true. The women are there. They're just not recognized for the work that they're doing. Partly because in many countries, if you don't own the land, you're not considered a farmer, and women often don't own the land. But so in order for that to change, we also need to change the way we organize those trainings. And so, for example, if you're in a lot of places in the Global South, women have the responsibility of taking care of their kids. And if you want women to be able to attend a training for several days, well, that's something that you need to take care of. So if you arrange childcare during the day at the location of your training, for example, you're going to increase the likelihood that women are able to participate. And those are things that are not necessarily easy to budget in projects, unfortunately, but those are the things that need to change, because just saying, oh, well, we tried to have 50% women and they didn't show up, that's not how it's gonna, that's not gonna change. So anyway, we are enough with the theory. We're very privileged with having the presence of Esther here. So Esther is online from Switzerland. And so Esther, you have, I don't know where to look because I don't know where she can see me. You have developed a regenerative farming concept. Can you tell us a bit more about your vision and your mission first, and then some of the challenges that you have encountered in your own situation and how you managed to address them? Thank you.
Yes. Hi, thank you, everybody. I'm really happy to be with you today about this topic with regenerative agriculture. It's really, for me, so important, and I think it's the key for all the different crises that we are living actually in our world. I'm growing up in the Swiss-German part, in the Alps, on a little farm, and for me, nature was all my life a part of family, a part of for the school in the nature was really important for understand how we can in the future give answers for the different changes. First part, I will maybe just show you when I start with the project 20 years ago with my husband. The first part was to recognize what are the topics today that we have to handle. And the first one, it's everybody knows it, it's the climate change, it's all the topics around the biodiversity. Biodiversity is also really important for our healthness. When biodiversity is lost, we have much more pressure for all the problems with virus, and we was in 2 or 3 years ago living the COVID part. It's also a result about the biodiversity that we lost in the last years. Our idea with my husband was to give positive answers with really impact with our own farm. We have a little farm in Châteaudet in the middle of the town. We have about 30 cows, and we go up to the mountain in the summertime. And our cows take care together with young cows from the town, about 200 hectares of Greenland. And it's important to understand this Greenland is really important for cut the CO2. Our land actually, with the help of our cows, cut more than 2 million tons of CO2 in the soil. And this means these are 2 million flies from Switzerland to New York back. And it's really important that we take care of this land. And now I will show you our idea for the future. I'll show you a little film where you can see in the future we want to open the door from our farm. We want to make a center of transition. You will see the video in a little moment. To bring the people back to the nature, because we think that regenerative agriculture, it's much more than just make organic food. It's all about the connection from the people into our nature to make understand the people that we are the nature. We don't are just human being. We are a part of the nature. You see here in the video, we want to build a new center. The first building that you see here called Bovino, it means the cow. The cow for us is the center of everybody because she product the food for us, but she product also all year. A cow product 10 times the weight of her from microorganisms. Our cows, it means 7 tons of microorganisms for the soil each year. You see the building, it's a building with absolutely natural materials. You see a green roof that brings back the biodiversity also up on the building. You see different areas for learning the people how to take care from the nature, how to understand human beings from a part of nature. Here you see a little center of natural plants and with a big room where we can organize meeting points, as well the marriages or different activity like this. Now we'll go to the part of the farm. In the center of the farm where live the cows in winter, we have as well plants. They're living in the same areas than the cows, because they're cleaning the air. And in the same time, we take back the manure of the cows and we build electricity for all the building about a biogas individual area. You see in the first floor restaurant, the people can learn in this way where come the food. It's really important to have big gardens around the farm with where we take care of all the races and spaces of animals and plants. You see little building, where in the little building you have different animals downstairs, and in the top you have seminars, you have all as well hotel rooms. And now we'll go to the second building. This is called Planto. It's a house. Inside this house, you have an organic shop for all the products that come from the farm. But you have as well a health center with natural cabinets where people can learn that the healthness of the people is connected in a straight way with the nature. And all around you see there are trees, there are meeting points, there are possibilities for intergeneration connections for the kids with the grandparents. You see the animals are in the center everywhere. For the people can touch animals, they have to touch the plants, they have to put hand in. That can help to milk the cows. Then they can as well learn how can we eat plants that we found in the Greenland. It's really all about a concrete solution for bringing the people back to the nature, back in a reality. Because I think when people understand more what means all these different crises, how they are systemic and connect together, they have to understand as well the solutions have to be based on the systemics and holistic way that we see the world together. For build a project like this, I think you can understand that it takes a lot of time. We're starting from 15 years ago, and the part that we start with this concrete solution was when I gave birth of our first son. You know, I will remember all my life when in the moment that I take care from this baby in my hands, and I knew now it's the future. We have to react and be active now. And in the last 15 years, we have a lot of meetings with the canton, because in Switzerland, it's a first project like this. And when you want to build something like this on agricultural land, it's not so easy. You have to explain a lot of different departments from the canton have to be if us allowed that we can't go away with the project. There was 21 departments involved. We have the protection from the nature, but we have also the agriculture department or touristic part, or the health, all about healthness. There is the department of healthness, and all these people have their own rules, and all these departments are disconnected from the rest. And I think what is really important when you want to make go for it a project like this, it's bring the hard competence in. You have to, it's a lot about explain with your heart what means regenerative agriculture. A lot of this, lot of mans was in the departments in these departments in the canton. They come as well as in Châteaudet. They we bring back them also to the mountain up on the Alpage, and they can make an experience from cook the milk on the fire, from make a cheese. We bring them back in the middle of the cows for understand them. It's not only a climate problem, the cows, they are also the solution when we gives them the right place and we give them the right food. Cows are wonderful and they can bring a lot of solutions as well. And for this reason, in the last year, the most important part of my job was really storytelling, you know, explain with the competence of heart to the people and believe that people understand. I think it's a lot about believing also. From 3 years ago, a journalist makes a documentary about 2 years of my life. And she asked me a day, but where do you take all this energy for all the day, 10, 11, 12 hours, continuous to explain to the people? And I answered them, I take it from the nature. I live all the day in the middle of the nature. I live all the day in connection with the animals and with the childs. Our childs do homeschooling. They live together with the animals every day. Today, our son, he's 15 years old, was with his chicken. He make the last part of the lift of the chicken means that makes meat with the chicken, and he's really in a mindset to respect everything what nature giving us. And I think this is the biggest gift that life can give us, to be in contact, to bring people together and to speak with the heart. And this is the project what Cercle de Vie, it means your life circle. And we want now in this next months, we are in the last part of the public inquiry. And it's a really important step for after, in the end of this year, I hope so, start with the building. And as well, what is important is this in this part of the year is to bring people involved in the project. We speak about it before. We have to raise a lot of money when you want to build a project like this. And it's really important that people understand when we bring back the capital in the land, in the basic of our world, solution will be possible, and the future will happen. Okay, I think it's for the moment what I have to say to you. And I like a lot, Alice, it's all about dance, you know, dancing with all these elements, be in flow. And it's, I think for this reason, women will make the difference, because it's something that women knew. They knew take care to the life, and they knew dancing with all these elements.
Wow, that's so beautiful. Thank you. The 21 departments made me laugh, because I feel like this is something that I keep coming back to in my work too. We've created a society that is so siloed that we've created departments and jobs that are each meant to address one specific piece of one problem. And we're now living through polycrisis where everything is connected, and we've made it so hard to develop trans-sectoral, multidisciplinary solutions to the crises that we're facing. But that's the only way. We have to develop systemic solutions. And yeah, society hasn't really gone this direction so far. Now we have to change that. So we want to open it up to your questions, your comments, to any of the panelists. So maybe we can turn on the lights in the room, and we'll pass some microphones around. Perfect, thank you. Does anyone have a first question for any of the panelists? I see one in the back over there.
Yes, hello. It was very interesting to hear your points of view. And I would like to start with a very general and generic question to whomever might feel the most willing to answer. How do you approach people who've heard for, I believe, 45 years that in a successful economy, there's a huge sector for services, there is some industrial employment, and agriculture actually should give ironically, a huge field to using as many machines as possible, but not necessarily that many people, because it used to be the case and the progress is measured in a relatively low amount of people still working in agriculture. So what do you tell them when you say, well, actually that doesn't seem to be working all that well, and how do you change this mindset?
Maybe we'll just take two, 3 questions, and then we'll respond to several. Yeah.
Thank you so much for this very interesting presentation. We talked a lot about the offer, let's say in very economic and capitalist term, but what about the demand? Because you mentioned that women can be amazingly community-driven, recognize each other. But when we talk about food that we technically use every day, we are not thinking about the hands who made it possible, and less about women who can be behind it, especially in maybe a period where we don't put so much maybe attention to food. Maybe it's we are in a reversing period, but I mean, even the time that we are dedicating to food is reduced due to our rhythms. And I was wondering if it was a preoccupation that was considered, how we can bring more visibility, awareness, and maybe, yeah, and if so, how it is addressed. Yeah, because especially I get this image where food retail is so big that it can be a huge obstacle between the final consumer and the farmers. So yeah. Thank you.
So let's maybe start with those 2 because they're big questions, and then we'll continue. Does any of you want to start?
Maybe I'll start and I'll take your question, because I think thank you for both questions. The point you raise is critical about how do we as consumers, contribute to the emergence of regenerative agriculture. What information do we need, what time, and what means? And there's a couple of reasons for that. First of all, I mean, the food has become so cheap because we've industrialized and standardized the whole process at the cost, immense cost, as Alice mentioned, of natural resources. Secondly, we think we have no time, but there's more and more information on the connection between healthy food and our own health. So it's an investment, and it's how do we actually communicate on the fact that we invest in our own health when we take care of the food that we buy. And thirdly, and I'll finish there, and I think Esther can bounce back on that, I think what Esther mentioned about reconnecting local communities to their farm, not just for the food, but for the whole experience, will contribute greatly in contributing as consumers to the emergence of regenerative agriculture and healthy food. So small circuit reconnection.
Well, first of all, thank you very much. You pointed to absolutely critical questions and tough ones. Tough ones because agriculture is very diverse. You cannot just talk about agriculture. You have different farms, you have different crops, you have different cattle. Average farm in France is 50 cows. And it can make one family live. You can go to very big farms. If you go in the Netherlands, you go up to 500,000 cows. It's really in the EU. You have a lot of models that are coexisting, and you are right. We thought that, for instance, Netherlands was the solution, because you would bring huge farms, and now they are the one meeting the most problems. So I really believe in regenerative agriculture because it's really locally based. It's really something that is, there is no one size fits all, but there will be many different solutions at landscape level, and we have to think about it all together. But for sure, there is a question of the economic viability. And this is also the way that we can address this economical viability. If you make it too small, the family, if you go under 50 cows, the guy will not earn his life. And this is a true economical thing. And if you go too big, it's something different, and the impact will be climate. But honestly, I wouldn't be able to give you a real good answer saying, okay, I've got the answer. The answer is, let's turn to the landscape level, let's turn and work with the farmers and find solutions that are viable for climate and for communities and for also consumers, and this is the segue. Thank you very much for your question. I worked, as you can imagine, in industry for a long time. And consumers are at the center, and they mustn't be at the center. Like farmers are at the center, but they mustn't be at the center. Because it's a collective problem. It's a community problem. It's a nationwide problem. Of course, it's super important to produce healthy food, but we must keep it affordable. And this affordability is all between the hands of policymakers. We really have to think of a system that will really help taking at least a part of the cost, because there is an increased cost. If you want to pay for ecosystemic services, let's be honest, it's not the price of food that you're paying today. And many people won't be able to afford it. So we really have to have that different mechanism with investors, with finance, with policymakers, and with consumer awareness that will enable this new economic system to be affordable for all. And this is why I'm saying consumer has a huge part to play in the demand, but it cannot be only on its shoulder. Same on farmers. You have the cost of the transition, the risk of the transition is huge. You go from a system where it's super predictable. I plant this, I put this entrance, I put those fertilizers, I know the volumes, I go to see my bank, and you know what, they're gonna give me the loan. And now I must say, okay, I'm gonna try a lot of things. I'm going to grow 5 different crops. The volatility of the crops is going like this. I cannot give you the predictability. And by the way, the transformation is going to last 5 years. We really have to find together with the investment, with the public sector, with in a lot of public finance, a way to de-risk this investment for the farmers. The transition cannot be only on the farmers' shoulders. Hope I answered the question. Thank you.
And I'll add, we need to be better able to use climate information to anticipate things like major drought or other climate events that have a big impact on
Or maybe
yields.
if Esther wants to bounce back
Exactly.
on diversifying the revenue as well.
I think I can only speak for our one solution, but as Alice said, there is a lot of different farms. For us, I think it was about the concept of circular economy to start to think. We have our cattle with the cows. We have our land. What we can make better to last less. Because when you see the restaurant, for example, I'll give you one example for the project. We have a concept that we produce the food in our farm, also as well other farmers in the town and in the region, and they bring the products in the organic shop. What we don't need in the organic shop go to the restaurant. What we can't use in the restaurant, we use it for our team. We use it for the grandparents in the village that can have access on really qualitative food. And we less, like this, a study shows us, we less 60,000 francs, Swiss francs, we lost 60,000 Swiss francs less each year. And I think it's when we want to bring the economic part in regenerative agriculture, we have really to bring together the different systems, and the circular economy helps us a lot. Like the nature, she makes exactly the same. She also, all the nature lost nothing. She used every part, and when you have grass, the cows don't eat grass, but it will becomes the soil after. And I think we have to think about this part and bring the consumer together with the agriculture for speak about these topics. Because actually all our products go to the customer in a direct way, and we have more from our products, and the customer pay less that when he have the intermediaries, people like Coop in Switzerland or Migros in the middle of the both. I think it's really about circular economy and be in touch with our customers, speak to the customer and bring that agriculture together. We like to speak to the people, but some other agriculture just didn't like it. Not everybody have to do the same, but we have to work together.
Thank you. We'll take a few more questions, maybe 3. Many questions. And we'll do about 10 more minutes, and then we have a reception after the event, so the goal is that the conversation can continue with a glass and some food.
Good evening. Thank you for everything. I just wanted to continue on what has been said right now. How do you see the future? Like, to be very pragmatic, because we're, as you said, 8 billion now on the planet, and many of us eat meat regularly. And I personally don't really see how all the farms could become like yours, which is a fantastic idea. I love it, but I have some trouble imagining like farms that have 1,000 cows becoming like this. But then how could you address the demand that is like high nowadays? And pragmatically, how do you think it's going to be in the future? Because we need to have meat for everyone, and people are not going to reduce meat just because we say we should. I know, but like people are not going to reduce if you say only we don't have enough. So, yeah.
Interesting question. Thank you. Maybe 2 more for now.
Thanks a lot for sharing your experiences. And thank you, Esther, for sharing about your project. And we hear a lot nowadays about resetting imaginary words, kind of retrain the brain to dream differently. And what you presented probably brings us in that direction, to look at the future in a different way. Kind of linked to that, I have a question for Dota, for us. I'm very curious, how do you find, more specifically, those women? And then once you find them, what are their needs, financially speaking? Because I see Esther project, which is huge. and then I guess, I don't know, there's a big range. I'm quite curious to hear more about the type of project you look at.
One more question.
Thank you very much for sharing all your experiences and comments on the topic. Just one small question regarding the ownership of women. So I had the experience of observing that indeed, like in global south, as you say, there is a huge difference regarding ownership between men and women. But I really don't know how is the situation in like global north, and more specifically in France? Like, I don't know, like if there are, like, what are the main issues related to like finance? Because you mentioned training and stuff, but regarding like ownership and finance in Global North, what are the main challenges for women? Please.
Yes, thank you very much. I thought I would share some of my experience because, well, I'm a regenerative farmer. I started 5 years ago, so I don't have a huge experience, but I certainly know what all the barriers are. I mean, I bought a piece of land in Spain, where I'm from, together with my sister, to set up a farm in an area where we were the first ones doing regenerative agriculture. Actually, we didn't even know the term regenerative. What we said is, we're buying this land and we don't want to do business as usual. We want to give back to the land, use what we have, adapt to the land also, adapt to what we have, and build our business around what we have. So we had the barriers of being two women in their 50s starting a business in an area where everything was intensive agriculture. All the farmers around us were men. And within a system that is made for huge production and a total disconnect between what happens on a farm and what happens in the supermarket. And just as an example, the supermarket in our village sells lemons that come from Argentina, whereas there are lemon trees on our farm and in other farms. Or, even the parsley doesn't come from the region. So the disconnect between what people buy, the food they buy, and what happens 2 kilometers from them is enormous. In terms of barriers, I mean, access to finance, forget it. I mean, we do it on our savings, basically. We started this project on our savings because, I mean, there was even not the remotest chance that any bank would finance us. New women in their 50s, I mean, no chance. The administrative barriers, I mean, when you say 21 administrations to do your project, I mean, our project is not like yours, Esther, much smaller, but we have all the administrative barriers that you can imagine. I mean, the water people, the soil people, even just to get the label, organic agriculture, I mean, it's just hurdle after hurdle. So my main message is the disconnect between this kind of agriculture and the reality, I mean, is the main barrier. It's the hugest barrier. I mean, then you have others that I mentioned, like the tools are too big for women. Everything weighs 3 times more than necessary. Then you have all the people that give you advice. If we've always done it like this, and this is the way it needs to be done. And I mean, just to say, well, we do it differently. And also, I mean, we have hired, of course, people to help us do the work, and they say, well, you have to do it this way. And we say, no, like, you have to burn the dead wood. We say, no, we don't want to burn anything here. We want to use the dead wood to build a hedge or something like that, just to have to convince your own workers that you want to do things differently. The time and energy that goes into that is immense. But on the other hand, the satisfaction of seeing the things grow and seeing that nature is coming back to an abandoned piece of land, which is what we had, is immense. I mean, it doesn't give you a lot of money for the time being, but it really fulfills you. I mean, it fulfills us, for sure. And I mean, I could go on with the barriers, but I really want to make the point that it's also extremely satisfying to work on a project like this, be a pioneer, do something different, and convince people that it works also. So I will stop here.
Thank you so much, and I think that that partly responded to some of the questions also.
I was just curious, how is this sustainable? You know, it looks like a very large footprint in Switzerland, which is very expensive. And how is this sustainable in the future? My grandfather had farms, he had cattle. It was constantly in flux. You know, he had soy, he had corn crops, cattle, horses, draft horses, everything. And eventually he had to sell it, and it became a golf course. But this looks really beautiful. But how is it sustainable? And how do you see, you know, what your produce is aligning with the competition, you know, when there's Chinese corn coming in, and why would people buy your product versus something they could find cheaper? Is it organic? Everybody wants to get something organic because it's better for their body. But why would they choose this over another?
Thank you. I had a question about the economic viability. And so there is a transition cost. But like, so you mentioned also, like, if we transition to the regenerative agriculture, there will be saving. I don't think the calculation is that simple, but like, is that enough to like fund those like reduced income of the agriculture to finance them? It's just to grasp the macro figure. I just want to know the balance of or the lack of funding to transition. Thank you.
Okay, maybe we start with Esther, because a lot of questions about your project, and then we'll go to both of you.
Yeah, just maybe for, you speak about the footprint. It's important, I didn't speak before, but the building is, we take the soil, when we make the building, we take the soil and we make the walls with the soil. The idea is at the same time also to show how can we build new buildings, because we need a new farm, because the old one that we have actually, it's not the kind of building that we want in the future to have, because it's important that the animals have really a good quality, more space, and a better life as well. And we start with the land that we need for sure that the animals live in a good way on our farm. And we take this land and was thinking about, okay, when we start to build, what materials we have to take, how can we translate the soil in a building, and how can we in this time as well help that the building companies learn to use more the part of the farm. And it is maybe the first point. It's really important as well with the walls. There are it's a lot of wood. In this building, we kept 4,700 tons of CO2 in the walls. This is the first part. It's important that we show when you have to make a new building, this building have to give answers for the different crises on in our society. And the second part of your question, why people make the choice to take these products and not some products from the China or other really bad the products with a bad footprint. I think it's, you know, products have an identity. It's important that we give back to the food identity, and the identity are the farmer. When you start to bring in your consumers in our system, we do it actually in Châteaudet a lot of time. Every day we have people, classes, companies, they come in the farm. They start to make different choice. And I think it's important that we start to make projects that are maybe little complete with healthness, with restaurant, with as well possibly for the people to make a stay to the farm, because the customer, when they make a real experience, they start to make other choice. And we have actually all the products today goes directly to our consumer. And I think it's because the products have an identity and they understand. I'm natural doctor as well. It was I study natural doctor. We are what we eat. And when we give more importance to this part of the products, we it's really good for our healthness. And yes, I think it's really important, this connection, what make a bridge from the customer to the farmer, and in this way make understand the costs from a good product. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Esther. Sofia, Alice, you wanted?
Okay. Okay. Maybe two questions I can answer. On the economics, we have been studying models, and I can tell you that it's sustainable. Just because it's true that you decrease the price of entrance, and especially because the entrance, what we call entrance, is fertilizers and pesticides. And those prices are skyrocketing because they are with oil prices. They are indicated on oil prices, so they are skyrocketing, and it makes that, in fact, if you are on conventional agriculture, you cannot predict the price that you're going to pay, and so it's highly unpredictable now. So the prices decreases and the yields come back plus after 5 to 7 years. So it costs less and it produces more. And we have some studies from BCG in Germany, in the US, and that are really showing that the farming model is sustainable and from an economic point of view. And this is kind of serious stuff, if I may say. Second, I'm just gonna take the question on how am I feeling, and you know what? I'm super optimistic. I know you can, but so I come from institution and policy making, and the best news I ever heard was on the IRA in the US and the Green Deal in the EU. You cannot imagine how incredibly proud I am to be a European, because the EU has set some laws that are the most advanced laws in the world, in financing transition, in setting targets. Of course, there's a lot of debate. Everything has not passed. But my goodness, how proud can we be? Because the EU is the one who has had the best global vision of transforming agriculture than the whole world. And then come the US with this incredible investment plan where there is a lot for regenerative agriculture. So yes, I'm optimistic because I think that a very big movement is on the way. We need everybody. We need consumers awareness. We need people awareness. We have to have people understanding what they buy and why they buy it. But honestly, I have some reasons to be optimistic. And that's it.
What a great note to finish. Optimism. I'll try and wrap up all the questions, and then we can, of course, pursue. But on the finance point, and I think you mentioned it before, so Alice, the KPIs are changing, and it requires new data. And we're at the very beginning of gathering this new data to try and have some kind of concrete measurement of what it means to invest in regenerative agriculture. So it's a very humble exercise, I'd like to say. It's not science yet. And regenerative agriculture takes a couple of years to actually produce the first yields. So we're going to have to be patient and trust the process, is what I'd like to say there. The other thing I'd love to say as we finish, and this is from my own personal experience, also as an entrepreneur, because I built a juice business in Switzerland, and why I'm so optimistic. When I set up this business, I was told by 99% of people around me that it would fail. It would fail because it was locally produced, it was much more expensive, and it put farmers first. And we had zero money in marketing budget. And that was a conscious decision because we didn't want to market a product, we wanted to connect consumers to the product. And it worked. And it worked. So I'm just sharing that story because what Esther is saying about bridging the gap, what we're saying about trusting the process and starting this new, let's call it revolution of trust and connection, we're only at the beginning of it. And optimism will help us co-create, will help us lift the barriers, so long as we do it together. And we move forward together, whether it's policy, finance, farmers that have the courage, and thank you, to actually undertake this huge, huge process with very little predictability on where it will lead, but they will connect local communities. And I really believe in scaling up, and this is why I'm engaged with Daughters for Earth, is I really believe in starting with projects, supporting them, and then scaling it up, not the same, diversifying it, but scaling up the movement and the philosophy. And I'll stop on that note. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I actually really like the end notes on optimism too. I get asked a lot if it's not too depressing to work on adaptation to climate change. I think it's probably more depressing to work on mitigation, because on adaptation you just work with people who are constantly trying to find solutions. And so in a way it's people who are optimistic, who are like, we're not gonna just stop trying, we have to keep trying, and we have ideas. And so I find that really inspiring. So this is another example of this. I would like to ask for a huge round of applause and thank you for Esther.